Cheers, everyone. I love coffee in the afternoon. I get a lot of emails. I get a lot of questions on the live feed on Sunday nights about what was my student teaching experience like and advice that I have particularly for people going into student teaching. Not last summer, but the summer before, Bridget from the Lettered Classroom and I sat down. She came to my school. We were supposed to record in my room, but then they were doing construction outside the window. We couldn't do it, so we had to go up to the art room. So we sat in the art room and we had a conversation about a million things that had to do with teaching. I think it was like 3 hours long. We sat there and talked, and it was really wonderful, and it was like really effortless. And I just love those conversations when you can just talk to someone like you've known them for a long time, even though you met them 5 seconds ago. So anyway, we had this conversation, and part of it was about our student teaching experiences. And I think everything I would say about student teaching still holds true to what I had in that conversation. So I want to show that clip here. If you still have questions, you can feel free to leave them in the comment section below, shoot me an email. And if you know anyone that is about to go into student teaching, you have a kid, you have a brother, a sister, a friend, a neighbor that you weirdly know about their student teaching situation, shoot them this video and so that they can check it out also. I realize that this video is seen all over the world, and I realize that not all over the world are these sort of experiences exactly the same. So if it's different somehow, go ahead and leave that in the comment section below. I think that's all I have to say about that. I don't really have a good intro. I was going to lead into something, but well, here it is.
Student teaching. What are some of your, big tips for those who are out there in their student teaching experience?
I think more than anything, I get a lot of students that come through different universities that are near my school, and they'll spend like a day of the week for like 3 months in my classroom. They just kind of sit in the back and they observe, and they can enter into stuff. Sometimes I'll have them grade or be a part of a lesson or be a part of a small group activity. But more than anything is start getting to know the students right away. I think there's so much value in just asking kids, like, what movies do you like? What TV shows do you like? What sports are you into? Where do you live? How long does it take you to get to school? Because that will inform the way that you're going to teach and the way you're going to interact with students as well. I learned so much stuff just because my students are into it, because I want to turn it into a lesson. And I've talked about this on my channel before. There is this really bad show. It's a bad show. I don't care if you like it. But Love and Hip Hop is like one of the worst shows I've ever seen.
I've never seen it.
And it's like The Real World, but 100 times worse. It's like drama. Right?
Okay,
So
yeah,
I watch it,
drama.
and I used to watch Jersey Shore. You remember this one?
Yeah.
So I used to watch that because all of my kids were watching it. I didn't want to watch it. And I remember the first night I was watching it, my wife came home and she was like, "What in the world are you watching in here?" And I was like, "Look, I'm studying for school. This is for the kids.
I have to know this stuff."
And I wasn't trying to be cool, but what I was trying to do was learn things about the kids so I could meet them where they were, so I could bring them up to where I wanted them to be. And that was my intro. So I think learning your kids and learning what they're into there's a lot there.
And I think that helps too. I feel like as a student teacher, when you come in, you're that other person. And the kids don't really want to come up to you. They will always want to go to their original teacher. So for you to go out there and to really get to know them and, learn as much about them, and that tells them, oh, I can go up to that person. That's going to get them to open up to you a little bit more as a student teacher too. So that's really important, because it not only it's a two-way street, you know, they're going to be more apt to want to come to you a little bit more, because they're going to know that you care about them. And kids know when you care, and kids know when you don't care. Like, they really do. So that's a really important thing too. I think my thing is just the level of professionalism that I am all about, like, whenever I see it with student teachers, just looking at the way that you dress, looking at the times that you're coming in, because there are some people that will come in and they're like first ones in, the last ones to come in, the first ones to leave. And that to me is like, okay, I want to see initiative. I want to see, like, when I was a student teacher, and not to say that I was the most amazing student teacher ever, but I may have been.
It's possible.
But like, I was there all the time. I was there waiting at the door for my cooperating teacher. I'm like, "Good morning, I brought you coffee." Like, I tried so hard to the point where you were like, you know, you watch those really goofy movies and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed for this person because they were trying really, really hard.
Yeah.
That was me. I was that person that tried too hard, but my cooperating teacher said, you know what? I felt like you cared. I felt like you wanted to be here and you wanted to do everything that you possibly could. And I jumped right on in. I remember the first day that I was there, she was like, you want to teach a small group? And I'm like, absolutely. I jumped on in and I did it. And I listened to feedback. And I think that was another thing too.
Huge.
I tried not to make excuses. Oh, but well, I guess this didn't, you know, wasn't really doing it for me, and this. No, you need to change this. This here has to do something and change. You know what I mean? And a lot of people, whenever you start to give them feedback, they start to say, well, they get very defensive, and I don't know about that. You know, well, this was in the way, and you know, then this kid was acting this way, and I had to deal with, you know, Johnny over there who was throwing pencils at little Susie, and you know, they're always making excuses for everything, and you need to take in what it is that person is saying and immediately try to fix it.
Yep.
You know, and if you don't know how to fix it, ask. There's no harm in asking and say, well, how should I do it? Because I don't really know. Because you don't know at that point. You know, you need to try everything and experience everything. And that's that time for you to be able to really learn from another person. And I always feel so bad. Like I had an amazing cooperating teacher, and I always felt so bad for some people whose cooperating teacher would never let them do anything.
Yeah.
That's like the worst.
Because that's what you're waiting for, right?
I know. You're like, I just want to jump in and do it.
You've like been in basic training your whole life. You're ready to like get out there on the field and do something.
Yeah.
And you know, I really like that you brought that up, because I'm thinking of the courage that it takes to teach, right? I think Parker Palmer wrote a book called that, Courage to Teach. But this idea of like, it takes a lot of courage. You're making yourself vulnerable. There's 30 people sitting in seats that are all looking at what you wore. They're watching every single thing that you do. What time do you come in? When do you leave? How much more time are you willing to give? Are you patient? Are you kind? And you have to reflect all the ideals that you want your students to have as the teacher. So if you want them to work hard, you have to work twice as hard as them.
Yeah.
If I want my kids to be vulnerable with me or come to me and talk to me about stuff, I have to be willing to be more vulnerable than they are. If I want them to be calm in a stressful situation, I have to mirror that stuff too. Right. And kids will pick up on those sorts of things. And you know, my cooperating teacher was, for me, he was the best person that ever could have showed up for me in that situation. I actually did my practicum with him, which was like a 3 or 4 month stint during a semester, and I went in and I just observed his class. I think I had to teach like one time or something like that. But he called my school and he was like, I liked working with this gentleman so much, I'd love to have him come back and student teach. And I was like, man, that was awesome.
That is awesome.
He is got to be one of the hardest working teachers I've ever seen in my life. He didn't start teaching until he was 40. He had a whole other career. He retired early.
Wow.
And then he came back to teaching, and his room was magnificent. It was the first really, really great room I'd ever seen in my life. He bought all of his own stuff without thinking about it. He would teach kids to drive on the weekends. He was in charge of 100 different clubs. The students were a part of his classroom. So like, he didn't just do all the grading or the attendance or all of these things that he took on. He figured out ways to like teach kids through all of those jobs. And he welcomed me into that in that very same way. Like I think I watched his class for about a week, and then I was teaching 3 classes that were all of mine out of 5, right? So in high school, I was teaching 3 periods a day, and it was on. It was like, nope, you're going to take it from beginning to end, and that's what it is. And he would sit in the back of the room, write little notes to me, and we would have these real talks every day. And it's really important, like you brought up, to be open to all of that stuff. Yeah. I'm a generally sensitive person.
Yes.
I don't like, it's hard for me to accept feedback, good or bad. And that's something I just had to get over. Like that was something I had to work on in myself and open myself up, because it's so important. Yeah. You know nothing when you start.
Exactly.
And I don't mean that in a mean way. Like, you're just not experienced. And it's going to take people like working on you to help you get to a place where you are a great teacher.
Absolutely. And having like that positive mindset.
Yes.
The entire time is huge. But like having that positive mindset is huge. You know, I would always see, and this was back when I was in elementary, because I've only had like one student teacher here in this school that I've been at this previous year. So when I was in kindergarten, we had lots of student teachers, always in the hallways, and they would always have this look of like stress on their face, or this look of like just irritated like on their face. Don't do that. Like, you have to fake it till you make it. Like literally, just put a smile on your face and keep that smile on your face the entire way through. That was one thing that I learned as a server. Like when I was a waitress, like I knew that I could never walk in not smiling.
What do you all want? You
know,
know,
I that was how I made my money. I had to smile and be nice and like invite. You know what I mean? That's how I made my money as a waitress. And so that I learned from that, and I was able to take it into student teaching, because even those days when I was stressed, I would literally go into the bathroom and I would cry. Like I would cry my eyes out, and then I would have to walk out and I would put new makeup on, and I would have to go right back into the classroom. But I had to fake it, and I had to put that smile on my face and say, you know what, I can do this. It's going to be okay. I'm gonna go home and just cry later and watch some, like, I don't know, some gushy love sappy movie and eat a gallon of ice cream. But be positive. Because I guarantee you, those teachers are all talking about you. Like, nothing is secret at schools, you know? Like, everybody knows everybody's business at a school.
Yeah, so, it's like a small family. Like, everyone knows everyone's dirt.
You all know each other's dirt. So, like, everyone can see when you're stressed out and when you're not enjoying something, when you can't handle something. They notice it. And they pick up on it, and it starts to travel. And those principals rely so much on other teachers. I can't tell you how many times a principal came up to me. So what do you think about so-and-so? So what do you think about so-and-so? You know, trying to get feedback about, because we're the ones that are in the trenches. They're not in the trenches. They're having to go to all these meetings all over the place. Yeah. And they ask us on our opinions about these student teachers, and you know, we honestly give them what we see. You know what I mean? Yeah. So keeping that smile on your face and staying positive, I think, is a huge thing in student teaching, and it's really important because that's going to show that you are really enjoying it. If you just constantly have a smile, then you're showing that you care, that you want to be there, that you're enjoying what it is that you're doing, and other people are going to pick up on that.
And I think that's just good practice for teaching in general. To the guy that I student taught with, Mr. Zakaria, Mr. Z, all the kids called him, he would say he was the best. He had a suit on every single day. Like, he was the real deal. He's told me that teaching is 90% acting, right? Maybe you have to teach something and it's not your favorite thing to teach. But if you tell the kids, all right, look, to be honest, this lesson kind of sucks, but we got to go through it anyway, they're going to be like, oh, all right. But if you tell them, like, you're pumped about it, they are more apt to be pumped. You're not going to win everyone, but they'll be more apt to be pumped. If you are really, really frustrated with a student, like, being able to control that anger, or to put on a face of concern instead of a face of disappointment, is really gonna translate better to the students. And I think even strategic anger can be really well used also. I do this in class all the time, where someone's doing something and I will yell at them, and so I'll like put them in their place and ask them to step into the hallway until I can speak with them, and the kids are all like, oh my gosh, like Reynolds, like it's been 8 months and we've never heard him yell. And then as soon as I come back in the classroom, I'm like, was that believable or what? Like, I just needed that to be believable. And the guys, every single time, they're like, you were really mad? I'm like, no, man, I'm not getting mad at that dude. But like, I needed that kind of shock to the system to be able to handle the situation. And and I don't suggest you do that in student teaching. Do not yell at children in student teaching. It has to be, for me, it's always very, very calculated, and there's a lot that goes into me even being able to do that. But I think 90% of what you're doing is acting.
Absolutely.
And I think there have been times when I've come into school. I would not have done this during student teaching. There have been times when I've come into school where, like, one of my kids was in the emergency room the night before. Someone was sick. I had a really, really bad toothache, or I needed a root canal or something crazy like that. And I've told my students, look, I don't have it today. I am literally like, I was up all night because my daughter got her hand stuck in an elevator door, or which is really funny because I just told you that story a little while ago. Or both kids were throwing up all night, and I come in and I can tell my students that, and they have totally, every single time without fail, they have complete empathy for me
because you built that relationship.
Cool. Yep. And I can't fake it those days, but all the other times I have to be the positive example and be pumped about school, or no one else is going to be pumped. I can't. What am I going to do? Rely on students to be excited to come to high school? Like, it's never going to happen.
No. And I think, so for those of you who are like in school and you're about to get to the point where you're doing your student teaching, so the way it will work is typically like you're there for a semester, right?
Yep.
Is that what you were there for? So you're there for a semester, and you begin by just observing the class. So you're getting to know the kids, you're observing the teacher, kind of figuring out the way that the school works. And
you observe other teachers, they'll send you to different classrooms and stuff.
And so from there, you start picking up little by little. So the cooperating teacher will then give you maybe 1 or 2 different lessons that you'll be able to do, and then they will slowly start to wean the class over to you. And I think for the most, like, I probably had my whole class for, I think at 3.5, maybe 4 weeks is what I had, like, them for the entire time, like the entire day. How long did you end up having yours?
Mine was almost the entire time that I was there. Yeah, and so I think that's a good point, because it's going to depend on your cooperating teacher as to how much time you have, but let them know. Like, if you are feeling comfortable and you're like, you want to do it, I would say let them know, like, put a little bit more on me and I'd like to go with it. And if you're not feeling particularly comfortable, like, make sure you voice that opinion as well.
Absolutely. And I think grade level also comes into that play too, because I feel like the kindergarten teacher would be a little bit more like, slowly doing it, slowly. I'm going to scaffold you into this whole process. Yeah. So it has a lot to do with your cooperating teacher, but then you will start to wean back and give it back, or in my case I just like handed it back to her that last
That's
day.
What I
was
did
like,
too.
Here you go.
Yeah, it was like party and then you have your
exactly
own class.
So it all depends with your cooperating teacher, but don't think that you're going to be like that entire time unless that person is very, very comfortable. But I think you said you knew him, Mr. Z, right, beforehand? Yeah. So that's probably like also a really big deal. That's why you got to have the class so quickly.
But I also started in September, but he and I worked all summer on things. Like, so he was one of those teachers that didn't just not work in the summer. Yeah. He was always like thinking about ideas or changing things up and then working on it all through the summer. And I got to be a part of that whole process. So that was some real education.
That's cool.
Coming from a teacher.
That is neat.
And I think it's important to note also that, what was I going to say? Now I'm going to forget. You said something I really thought was important.
Yeah, that's cool. That's neat.
Yes, that's what. What were we talking about that I thought was? I think it can be really easy to kind of like write those kids off, like you're never going to see them again.
Yeah.
And I think you should absolutely go in and teach and be the person that you want to be and act like you're never going to see them again, because then you're not tied to like, you won't be afraid that you're like, oh my gosh, what if I see them next year and they tell everyone about this? So go in and teach like that, but connect with those kids like you're going to know them for the rest of their lives. I just got a call maybe 3 months ago. Someone found me on Instagram and they were like, hey, I was in Mr. Z's class when you taught at Windsor Township High School.
Sweet.
And we're all going out for drinks. Would you be interested in going with us? And I was like, heck yeah, man. So I went. I have not seen these kids in, 12, 13 years, something like that. And we went in and it was like people with their wives, kids that like came in from California. Like there were about a dozen of us all sitting together. And it was so great. I mean, I love that anyway, but to be able to do that with kids that like, I knew nothing. I was a totally different teacher back then, but I still was able to create those bonds, and that is priceless to be able to do that.
Absolutely.
So it's just great. And I think creating those bonds, it just is later on in life, it's going to come back and be like, yeah, these were the people that were there in the beginning and they knew who I was, and you get to see your work paid off. Like they became, take a little bit of credit for who they've become.
Yeah.
I do, whether
Yeah.
I deserve it or not sometimes, but.
Yeah, so soak it all in. Like, just be a sponge when you're there, and
Yeah.
just try to soak everything in. I took lots of pictures. Like, I would go to other classrooms and,
Huge.
like, ask, and I
I
would take
took
pictures.
none, and I wish so badly.
I took lots of pictures everywhere I went. And whenever teachers would offer me things, I would take it. I'm like, I don't know what grade I'm teaching, but I'm going to take it.
Yeah.
So I would never not say no to any of it. So enjoy the experience, really get it all in, and just soak it up like a sponge, and just learn from it. Learn as much as you can. I would keep like a little journal, and then I would write down some of the things that I did that I wasn't very, very proud of, and then figure out how is it that I could always fix it later on. Like, how am I going to approach this differently the next day? So think of it that way too.
I would say one more quick thing I would say is be mindful of your social media presence when you're student teaching. When I mentor new teachers, right? So sometimes I work for Teach for America in the summer, and I mentor the people that are going to start teaching in the fall. One of the first things I do as I'm watching their classes, I look them up on Facebook or Instagram, and then I send them a message like, you should probably block this. That keg stand was probably epic, but I don't think you want it out there, because I know that students are going on and looking people up as soon as they find out what their full name is. They can just look you up in an instant. And I've had that really backfire on some teachers before. They just get to see how goofy I am with my students, which is why mine's just out there. Anybody can look at it. But that's also a very planned thing on my part. Like, and if you could do that as well. Like, if you want to have like a planned social media presence, that might be something that you would talk to your cooperating teacher about. But be mindful of that. Like, all that stuff you've ever put on the internet is now there, so just be mindful of that going forward. All right, so that's the end of our conversation. If you have questions about this, if we didn't address something that you were interested in, please go ahead and leave it in the comment section below. You can also go over and check out Leonard's classroom, which you probably already had because she's like a big deal. Gang, like I said before, if you think that someone could use this conversation, please shoot it along to them and so they can enjoy it. I think that's it. Wow, this was easy. Peace.